Good evening, good afternoon. It's your guy, I'm Prayer. We're back. We got another one today for you. This time we're going to be reacting to Heinz, Bigger Than You Know. So, like, I think Heinz 57 ketchup. I don't know what you guys think, but let's not waste any time. Let's go ahead and react to this video. So, let's get into it. Let's learn something. Let's see what they got for us. Hope you guys enjoy. If so, drop that like, hit that subscribe button, maybe share it with a friend. I appreciate it.
Heinz is one of the ultimate examples of a classic American brand. It goes back to the 1800s, and still, almost a century and a half later, it remains one of the most recognized names in food. I mean, we've all had the ketchup, right? I think that's a safe assumption, considering they are always, by far, the #1 brand, with well over a 50% share of
That's
that
exactly
market.
what I just
They
mentioned.
plan to sell over 650 million bottles of it across 140 countries each year, amounting to sales of more than $1.5 billion. Impressive numbers, but probably
Goodness.
not shocking, considering that we know Heinz dominates the ketchup market. But what you might be shocked
Yeah,
to hear
that's
is
absolutely
that this company
insane.
goes well beyond ketchup. They always have. They didn't
I actually
start
did
by
not know
making
that.
ketchup, and throughout most of their history, the majority of their business has relied on other products. So for this video, I want to talk about the evolution of Heinz.
Oh wait, they got like a
Focusing on
barbecue sauce
5 of
too
their
and
sales
stuff like that.
categories that I believe to be among the most
They got other
historically significant.
sauces.
Starting
So that's my
off with the
knowledge.
obvious one, condiments.
Yeah,
The name Heinz
that.
comes from Henry
Condiments.
Heinz,
I don't know
who
why I
started
said
the company
sauces.
in a way that you might not expect. See, his parents had immigrated from Germany to the United States.
Was he a brick
where they
man?
started a brickyard, but
Yep.
on that property there was also an area for gardening, which turned out to be a passion for a young Henry Heinz. By the time he was
Oh,
10
that's actually
years old,
crazy.
he was growing his own produce and selling it to his neighbors. Specifically, he would grate his own horseradish that was like at the center of it. So by the
Damn,
time he
man
was a
started
teenager,
young.
he already had his own successful business where he would employ people to deliver his homemade products to various grocery stores around Pittsburgh. He made enough money to pay for himself to go to business school, where he studied bookkeeping and accounting, and even returned to apply that knowledge to help out his parents' business. By 1869,
That's actually crazy.
5 years old, he partnered with a friend of his named Elsie.
At 25.
Who was able to provide financing and started this company that was specifically intended to sell horseradish, though they quickly expanded into other condiments as well, such as sauerkraut and pickles. However, this original business did not do well. I think it had a solid start, but by 1875, everything had taken a turn. They were feeling the effects of the financial panic of 1873.
I mean, I can
and
understand
believe
selling
that
just
they
like
contracted
horseradish,
with a farm to buy
sauerkraut,
all of the cucumbers that they grew that year,
and
but since
pickles
business
isn't
was down
like
and they ended
super
up growing
crazy.
way more cucumbers than were expected, Heinz and Noble couldn't honor that contract. Forced them into bankruptcy, the company crumbled, and the whole thing just ended in disaster. But I do want to point out that for someone so strongly known for his ketchup, for the first 30 years of his life, all of his professional endeavors were centered around horseradish. Fortunately, within the year, he
Interesting.
was able to start up a new business with a couple of family members, and this one turned out to be infinitely more successful. But interestingly, again, this business was not centered around ketchup. Their original hit product was pickles. That's how they first gained attention, so much so that Henry Heinz quickly became known as the Pickle King. And I do want to talk about a few of the things that made this attempt so successful. Part of it was utilizing clear glass jars for his products, because it was still at a time where food safety was mostly unregulated, so being able to see the food that was in the container was reassuring to the customers. Also not nearly as common at the
Interesting.
time was variety and food branding, two things that made Heinz stand out from most others. In 1896, he came up with the idea of advertising that he sold 57 varieties. Even today, you've probably seen the 57 on Heinz products.
Heinz 57.
But the thing is, that the
That's immediately
57
what I
never
thought about.
really meant anything. He had seen
That's immediately what I thought about. Heinz 57, and I immediately think ketchup bottle. Why? I have no idea. I guess that's like the most common one, but I'm not sure. You guys tell me what you think of. As soon as you hear Heinz, what do you immediately think of? Let me know.
a sign advertising that a company sold 21 styles of shoes and thought that using a specific odd number like that was a good way to catch people's attention. At the time, he sold around 60 different products, so he chose a number close to that he felt was the catchiest. And then another likely contributor to his success is the fact that Henry Heinz had a reputation for being an ethical person that was pleasant to work for. I won't go too far into the details.
Sorry about
here,
that,
but he
guys.
held
I was
high
just getting my water
standards,
dropped
created
off.
good working conditions, was an advocate for food safety, and he even started the second business partially as a way to earn money to pay off the creditors from that first failed business. By the time he died in 1919, his company had 25 factories that employed 6,500 people. Going back to my
That's
list,
a lot
Heinz
of
was all
workers,
about
like,
condiments
for back then.
during the days of Henry
I feel
Heinz.
like.
First it was horseradish, and then pickles, and then of course ketchup eventually became the thing that we all associate with them. But
Yeah,
one
exactly.
of their first successes outside of condiments was baby food. When Henry Heinz passed away,
Baby food.
his son Howard Heinz took over, and what many consider to be his greatest contribution to the company was in 1931 during the Great Depression when he introduced a line of baby food. That was a time when nutrition was a big concern, especially for babies, given the financial situation for many families. So this new product on the market, made by an already trusted name like Heinz, was well received. They introduced it in Britain a few years later.
That actually
and in
looks
the following
crazy.
decades became one of the world's biggest sellers of it. In 1994, they bought the British baby food brand Farley's for $140 million and the Indian baby food company Glaxo for $70 million, after which they controlled about a third of the global market. I thought this was interesting. In 2000, they were trying to buy the company that made beech nut baby food. It was the third largest seller in the US, while Heinz was already the second largest, each controlling around 14% of the market. Meanwhile, Gerber was the clear leader at 70%. However, the Justice Department didn't allow the deal to happen because they feared that things wouldn't be competitive enough if 98% of the market was controlled by two companies. So, oddly enough, even though the combination would have been much smaller than Gerber, still, they didn't allow it to happen. Another early market for Heinz that I think is interesting was tuna. In 1961, they acquired the company Starkist Foods, who was already well known for their mascot, Charlie the Tuna. By 1988, when Starkist had become the biggest tuna brand in the United States, they wanted to add to it by spending $200 million to buy Bumblebee, which at the time was the third largest tuna brand. But again, it was not allowed to happen for fears of a monopoly because the combined company would have controlled more
I didn't
than half
realize
of the
that
US
they
tuna
owned
market. But
that
in
kind of tuna.
1997, they were allowed to buy the United Kingdom's biggest brand of tuna called John West, briefly making Heinz the biggest tuna company in both regions. However, in 2002, in an effort to refocus on their more successful core products, they made this complex $1.8 billion transaction where they spun off a bunch of brands into their own separate company, and then that company merged with Del Monte Foods. One of the brands involved was Starkist, and then in 2006, they got out of the market completely when they sold John West Foods as well. The next category that I want to talk about is somewhat related.
So they were in the
and
tuna
that
game and
is
then got
pet
out.
Food. Believe it or not, Heinz used to be one of the country's biggest pet food companies.
I'm personally,
They say
I
that
don't
it's somewhat
really
related
eat.
to the tuna
I think of
because it
tuna.
started
I don't
back
eat
when they acquired
canned tuna.
Starkist. It
What
turns
do
out
you
that
guys
making
think? Do you
cans of
guys enjoy it?
tuna and making cans of cat food aren't entirely different from each other. That's why Starkist started a brand of cat food called 9 Lives, a brand that I'm sure many people recognize because once Heinz obtained it in that acquisition, they did quite a bit to help it grow into one of the biggest brands on the market. In fact, it was under their ownership in the 1960s when the 9 Lives mascot, Morris, was first introduced. Then, in 1995, Heinz spent $725 million to acquire the North American pet food business of Quaker Oats. It included many popular brands such as Kibbles and Bits and Pupperoni, both names that are just fun to say. It was a deal that made Heinz the third largest seller of pet food in the United States, with sales in that segment of more than $1 billion a year. But again, that didn't last long because their pet food segment was also separated in that complex deal with Del Monte in 2002, following a very similar path to their involvement with tuna.
So what all does Del Monte have then?
And this is a big one. In 1965, they acquired the company Ore-Ida. You would likely know them for their frozen French fries and tater tots and other potato products. And
I've seen those
name,
before.
By the way, Ore-Ida comes from a combination of the words Oregon and Idaho. They were located near the border and would grow their potatoes in those two states. And of course,
what a smart name
when it
to
says Ore-Ida, it's all right up.
What an interesting way to get your name.
If you bought that brand anytime since the 1960s, you have bought them from Heinz. Another interesting one, maybe among the more unexpected, would be Weight Watchers. In the 1970s, Heinz was originally interested in buying this frozen food company that Weight Watchers was working with so they can combine it with Ore-Ida, but they ended up buying all of Weight Watchers for $71 million, going on to grow the company and sell all of that Weight Watchers branded frozen food, even starting the brand Smart Ones in 1992 as sort of a complement to
Oh,
the
wow.
existing line. In 1999, they sold Weight Watchers for more than 10 times what they paid for it, but they did retain the licensing rights to sell the branded products. In fact, it was around that time when they entered into multiple deals to sell licensed frozen food products, probably the most notable ones being Boston Market in 1999, just months after their bankruptcy, and TGI Fridays in 2001. So when you see those at the grocery store, they are made by Heinz. The restaurants are just given a percentage of the sales for the rights to use the brand. And I should also mention Bagel Bites. They were acquired in 1991 as part of this $500 million deal,
I
and
didn't
have since
even
been utilizing that Ore-Ida branding. So there you
I
have
didn't
it.
even
That
realize
is
they
my
were
list
under
of
the
what I feel
Ore-Ida
have been the
branding.
most notable or unexpected
That's actually
product
crazy.
categories for Heinz. But I do want to
Goodness.
make it clear that it is not a complete list. Heinz has sold so many things over the years that don't fit into any of these categories. Soups have been big, first introducing tomato soup in the 1800s and continuing their involvement in many different ways ever since. Sauces have been another major part of it. In 2001, they made a deal that gave them control of the pasta sauce brand Classico, and then in 2005, they made a different deal that put them in charge of the brand Lee and Perrins. And obviously, the baked beans, there's a lot that could be said about that. And keep in mind that my list is meant to be the categories that I found to be the most significant or interesting to talk about. Though I suppose
That
I
is
should finish up the story,
absolutely
because in 2013,
insane.
big things started happening at Heinz. That year, for the first time ever, Heinz themselves was acquired. They were bought by Warren Buffett's company, Berkshire Hathaway, and a Brazilian investment firm called 3G Capital in a deal valued at $23 billion. Remember, before any of
That
this
is
happened,
absolutely
Heinz had grown into a company
insane.
with well over $10 billion in sales each year. Then, only 2 years later, the next big thing happened when Heinz merged with Kraft, another massive, impactful deal, considering Kraft was also the owner of a bunch of popular food brands. If you want more specifics, I have a previous video about it, but
I
the
think we've
combination
seen
of the two
that.
created
Have
the
we seen that
third
one? I don't know if
largest
we've
food
seen
and
that
beverage
one.
company in the U.S. and the fifth
Kraft
largest in the
Heinz.
world. But since that merger, Kraft Heinz, as it's now called, has
It's
been
fallen off.
underperforming.
Oh,
They've been
wow.
criticized for lacking innovation, being too focused on cost cutting, not offering healthy enough foods, letting their brands lose value. It becomes a whole separate, complex subject, but that is how Heinz exists today. Let me know in the comments.
That
Did you
is
know all of
actually
this about
insane.
Heinz? I think it's easy
No,
to
I didn't. I
say
didn't
them from
realize
basic
Heinz
ketchup
had
company, or maybe one
owned
that has
and
ventured
gotten
into
rid
a
of that
few
many
other products,
things.
but this
I also
is a
didn't know
pretty
they
extensive
merged with
history. It has
Kraft.
been over a century with a lot
So
of
I wonder
movement
what
in a
all
lot of
exactly
different
is
areas.
under
Anything
Kraft
check
and
about
Heinz
Heinz
is
or
at this
ketchup,
moment
right?
is. Like, how many brands are under those two companies now because they merged? Like, that's absolutely ridiculous. That's insane. You guys let me know if you knew about any of that. Let me know if immediately when you hear Heinz, you only think of ketchup, or if you think of something else. You guys let me know. Hope you guys enjoyed. That is all for this one. I will see you guys in the next one. I am out. Peace.